Over the past decade, the Fenway neighborhood has attracted new housing developments, mostly for the upscale market. The projects have made the neighborhood a more attractive place to live and not just to see a ball game or enjoy the nightlife. But it's been a struggle to maintain the Fenway's limited supply of affordable housing. Last week, there was a victory to celebrate, improvements to help make some of that housing affordable for the long term at West Fenway Apartments. These are built around 20 years ago by the nonprofit Fenway Community Development Corporation. Joining us as our guest is the executive director of the Fenway CDC, Dharmena Downey. Thank you very much for being with us, Dharmena.
Good to be back with you, Chris.
First of all, talk about how important this West Fenway Apartments development is to the people who live in it, because I guess it's a precious commodity, this affordable housing in the Fenway.
Affordable housing is a precious commodity in the Fenway, and why the West Fenway Apartments is really important to people in the neighborhood, because it's housing a population, the elderly and disabled, who, were it not for their ability to have affordable housing, would not be able to live in the Fenway. And the Fenway would not just lose, a demographic, it would lose, part of the diversity of the neighborhood, and it's something that the Fenway CDC cares very much about.
Talk about the continuity here, because if you don't have that kind of affordable housing, you're pretty much left with students and people who are, I guess, were not so many years ago students, but who are now young professionals. Nothing wrong with either category per se, but I guess if that's all there is in the neighborhood, I guess it's not the Fenway.
Well, having 3/4 of the demographic in the neighborhood is students. And I mean, they're here to get a world-class education, so we really welcome them here, but it causes enormous pressures on what otherwise is a vibrant residential part of the neighborhood, and it seems to be the part of the neighborhood that gets lost in most people's eyes. And within that residential neighborhood, there's an increasing need for affordable housing so that people can stay in the neighborhood. I will tell you that over the past year, we've done an enormous amount of research so we could document actually how much affordable housing we have in the neighborhood, and we've lost over 2% of the housing, so we're about 16% affordable, and who we're losing the most is our families. And those are primarily single female head of households, families of color. So we track in a very unscientific way where they go to, and what we're finding is that they end up in other low wealth neighborhoods where they don't have the opportunities that they would in the Fenway. So they don't have access to jobs, transportation, good schools. So we're working really hard to maintain a certain level of affordability so we don't lose a generation of people who would otherwise be able to thrive in the Fenway.
Another factor here is that rents are going up quite a bit in the city. I think in 2011 for the whole city it was something like 25%. So Fenway must be getting some of that.
At the Fenway, it is. We're looking at 2-bedroom apartments for $2,700, 3-bedroom apartments, we've seen them as high as $4,200. And so who can afford those? And generally what we see is students, living, 2, 4, 6, 8 to a unit just to be able to afford it.
At West Fenway Apartments, you have a building, it's not very old, it's not quite new, and you're doing some things that don't really dramatically change the look of the building, except maybe for the solar panels on the roof. But how important are those improvements to making this an affordable development?
Well, one of the things that we found, that since we did a lot of energy upgrades and did bring in solar, so we've seen the energy costs go down by 40% so far, and with the advent of the new solar panels, we expect that the water bills will decrease by half. So it's quite dramatic for keeping income in the pockets of people who live there, instead of having to spend their disposable income on energy costs. And that, just having those residents in the mix in the Fenway is really important, because those are the folks that really need access to, for example, the medical facilities that are here, that were they not in the Fenway would have, it would be a different game for them.
I'm sure it would be disruptive. Looking into the future, there are some more projects being planned. Some of them are pretty significant in terms of size, at least. They're going to have some set aside for affordability, but I guess there's a debate going on now about what's the best way to make that happen.
Well, we're looking at what's the best way. Like I say, we've been losing affordable housing in a pretty steady clip. And that when new developments are coming in, and our Urban Village Committee is tracking 27 of it as we speak. So that includes the institutional master plans and the private development that's coming in. But one of the things that's happening under the inclusionary housing policy is all of these private developers will have a requirement that they need to build between 10 and 20% affordable units. They have 3 ways that they can fulfill that requirement. They can build the units on site. They can build the units off-site in the neighborhood, but not in their development, or they can pay into a fund that's housed at the BRA, the Boston Redevelopment Authority. More and more and more and more, we're seeing that developers are opting out of actually building the housing because it's more cost-effective to pay into a pool of money that does get used for affordable housing, but it does not stay in the Fenway. So in the last decade, we've lost $11 million and 150 units. And we did get some community benefits, so we want to be clear that the neighborhood is realizing some benefit. And what we're seeing right now is that there's another $10 million on the table that we're likely to lose unless we can find projects to invest it in the neighborhood. So what the Fenway CDC has initiated is an inclusionary housing initiative, which looks at the first part of the strategy is Fenway specific, so looking at how to keep as much of the money as possible for the use for affordable housing in the Fenway. And then we're working with colleagues across the city, so it would be folks from the Mass Association of Community Development Corporations or our CDC brethren across the city, the Chinese Progressive Association, the Boston Tenants Coalition, to really look at ways, and working with the BRA, to look at ways to make the inclusionary housing policy much more inclusive and much better for not just the Fenway, but all Boston's neighborhoods.
Of course, there might be some tough decisions down the road because as much as you want to make up for the erosion of affordable housing in the Fenway, it might be more expensive to build a unit in this neighborhood because the market's different. So I guess maybe some of that money might go to another neighborhood, and you just have to say that's the best deal you can get.
And also to be clear, that if Mattapan isn't healthy, neither is the Fenway. If the Fenway isn't healthy, neither is Allston Brighton. So we are all in this together, and it really is to look at how to have affordability across the city. So looking at different neighborhoods, I believe Roxbury has 65% affordability. Now, is that the best use of putting those dollars in the Roxbury where there's already proliferation of affordable housing?
I'm sure they worry about displacement there too, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's how to work together. And one of the things that we find in the Fenway, not just with the housing, but with institutional encroachment, it's all the educational institutions, they need to expand because they're businesses. They need to grow and be healthy and to thrive and to continue to attract, quality students. So it's really, and the medical facilities, the same thing. So it's looking at how do we look at the health across the neighborhood and all of us get as much as possible for what our real needs are. So it's a fine balancing act, and I'm fond of saying that there is no place, I would say, on the planet that has what the Fenway has in terms of its quality educational institutions, the medical facilities, our cultural resources. And oh yeah, we have Fenway Park. Now we also have this really vibrant residential community, which in some ways seems under siege in the midst of these incredible riches.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Glad to be here. Thank you for having us.
From the Fenway CDC, Dharmena Downey.